see is actually why we're even having this conversation. Because for too long, we were just talking about the culture of our organizing and the culture of our organization. And what the culture, to be culture means we all created, right? It means we all created, right? Not just some of us, not just one of us, but all of us. And one of the aspects of the culture that we have created that we're all collectively working to heal from, because we've already talked about racism dehumanizes all of us. And so we've all been dehumanized, and there's all work for us to do to reclaim our humanity, to heal. And one of the things that racism has taught us to do is to live in the culture of avoidance. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Racism has taught us, and so we as an organization are really looking to step into our greatness. And so our being here in this conversation around sexual harassment, because people are co-opting intersectionality, right? People are co-opting intersectionality because what they're not doing, for a road to, I'm real basic. So when I hear the word intersection, I think the street guard. And this opportunity, this sexual harassment grounded in our anti-racist principles, gives us an opportunity to look at how, particularly we as Black women, how, as we look at our race and it intersects with our gender, how has our oppression shown up? How have we avoided the way that, what I understand the difference between patriarchy and male dominance? Yes. And we got to get clear about the difference in patriarchy and male dominance. But we've avoided the conversation. So this workshop, this sexual harassment training, isn't going to be all things and cover everything in 4 hours. Deborah Love is doing us a solid. And what I mean by that is, how we tell people we do our workshop, we ain't taking more than 40 people? She was all right, I will take more than 30. But you see how many of us in here. She's doing us a solid because it's important to us as staff and the Trainer Accountability Council that this happens. And this happens with us collectively because we are building on the strong culture that we've had, that part of what we'll be doing the rest of the day is lifting up those things that have been a part of our culture that got us where we are.
Time we're going to be careful what you say and do around others. I don't touch anyone in any way, tell off-color jokes or stories when I don't know for certain that those nearby are okay with that. I won't say anything to a woman about her clothes, shoes, hair, etc. I act like a gentleman at all times. That doesn't mean there is no interaction. There is, of course, office gossip, life stories, work issues, and the like. Male IT. Female education. I was denied a promotion before #MeToo. I probably would not have put up a fight. This time I did. The movement has given me the courage to stand up for myself and for others. It has also made me very conscious of how I treat other people, both men and women. So she took some of her power back. So I'm giving it away. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Female. I have worked in the male-dominated fields my entire life. Over 2 very different careers, and have never had any issues working with my male counterparts. I'm not oversensitive about rough language, dirty jokes, and actually enjoy the male-female working interactions I've had. We always respect each other and pal around just fine. So I haven't changed one aspect about how I work with men, other than possibly reassuring new men I meet that I'm cool with men being just the way they are, occasional warts and all. Male high tech. I have always been respectful of all coworkers, but after #MeToo, I find myself avoiding social interactions entirely. I've become more disconnected than ever. Male in the finance department. I am more cautious around women. Thank you. I try to not look in their general direction anymore. And if there's an absolute necessity for me to interact with women in my workplace, I always approach them from the front, face to face only. I don't want to suddenly teleport behind them. And this is usually the most stressful part of my day. So, what's your name?
Yvette.
Hi, Yvette.
Hi.
It actually has changed the way I show up and watch how women show up. That my experience is that the women that I've seen in the workplace, that they are still happy to, it's like I'm still allowed to talk about a man's body, I'm still allowed to engage him in different ways. There's almost sort of this a way of double standard.
Because I found that when people think sexual harassment, oh, you're probably talking about a slight, a joke, a slur, a pinch, asking out on a date too much, being overly sexual in the work or academic space, right? No, I want people to understand that we're talking about sexual misconduct. So we understand the range of behaviors, right, that can occur in an academic, learning, or professional environment, or workspace environment. The definition is sexual misconduct encompasses a range of behavior used to obtain sexual gratification against another's will or at the expense of another. Sexual misconduct includes sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, and any conduct of a sexual nature that is without consent or has the effect of threatening or intimidating a person against whom such conduct is directed. So I just want to make it clear. It's much broader. I don't know how many cases I dealt with at the various universities I worked at, Tulane University, Ole Miss, University of South Florida, Washington State University, University of Washington, where stalking was an issue. I don't know how many situations where I had med students stalking their professors. Right? Couldn't figure that one out. And so graduate students stalking, other students stalking each other. Right? And even when a label of sexual harassment, stalking is a federal crime, a state crime, criminal activity. Telling a sexual joke in the workspace is not going to cause you to have a DA come home. You're stalking someone or you're assaulting someone, putting your hands on an individual, and you put your hands on someone in the workspace, that's assault without the consent. So our next activity is, and it's going to be a little difficult, but I know we can figure this out. The question is, Dr. Kim talked about zero tolerance. All the board members said, we want zero tolerance. And I took them through this exercise. Okay, you said it, but what does it mean? Because I can't tell you, say, okay, that's it, so you can go do it. No, this is not my environment. I don't control this environment, right? So they come up with something, but you know what? They didn't have all the answers. Don't tell them I said that. Need more work. All right, so what you need to do is to find some space, some way where you can kind of corner off, and the question that you're going to respond to, the work that you're going to do is this question. Here. The leadership says we will not tolerate any kind of sexual misconduct from our employees, trainers, board members, or staff. So what does zero tolerance mean? So in a few sentences, design what that would look like. Design what that would look like. Anyone else over here? I think you were next, sir. Tell me your name.
Joseph.
Joseph.
I think that so much of the many things being true. And I understand what Lisa is sharing. But at the same time, what I think about is the impact on our humanity as men. That when we are on our healing journey, we have to critically look at the impact that we have in the people that we are in relationship with, because of how we've been socializing this arrangement to think of women as objects and problems. Right, because of the same dynamics that Lisa is talking about.
Right.
So what has that cost me and the other men in this room that we don't have to do what Dr. Kim was saying earlier, kind of look at ourselves and think about how we have to participate in this conversation.
Thank you, that's excellent. And then we have a piece in here, we're going to explore that, and I'm going to let you do that part. One more right here.
So I think as a woman in Annie.
And Miss Annie. Okay, Annie.
Many times in all-female spaces, one of the things that I like to examine and talk about is how we perpetuate a culture of this, because I've been in female schools. We don't need, just the same way we say we don't need white people around for racism to manifest. We don't need men around for this to manifest, whatever, sexual harassment or gender, whatever.
Sexism.
Sexism. So we don't need men around because I've been in spaces where we're making it manifest without any men. By the things we say to each other, by the way we treat each other, those types of things. So I think it's important that that be part of the conversation. That it's not, that for me, sexual harassment and sexism is not just about man and woman. That it's a culture, an environment and a culture that's put in place that women alone or men alone manifest.
Thank you, Annie. Can you give it back here? Okay, so you're
It also could be that I don't want to give you woman, I'm a woman, I don't want to give you a promotion because when I came on to you, you rejected me. Because this is a very woman.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking about how this shows up across the continuum of relationships.
It's in this workbook we're talking about, but bring it out. That's just throw it out there and say, I hope we're gonna talk about this, or I wanna talk about this.
Well, I hope we're going to talk about
The Supreme Court did actually recognize male-on-male discrimination and sexual orientation, right? But they recognize in a very narrow way, right? And so you're right, women sexually harass or perpetrate sexual misconduct against other women. And that's what you're, yes, I think you were referring. Yes, ma'am?
Like poor people,
Like poor people?
I want to declare that women need to break up with you. Because ever since we started talking about this Me Too movement, we never addressed why the movement was started in the first place. We just went to blaming women. I'm sorry, y'all, I have a problem with that. I mean, if we're gonna have a full round of discussion, I'm here for that. But the field did not narrowly define this movement. Period.
You know,
Terry Crews was one of the first people. Terry Crews, a man, was one of the first people to stand up in this movement. And the idea that from the time we started talking, we jumped immediately to attacking women, that's how I feel. And I feel if we're gonna have a rounded discussion, we need to have a rounded discussion. We cannot get rid of this problem by talking about, because it causes male fragility and some discrimination, we can't talk about women and what's happening with them.
We're gonna talk about both.
No, I know, but you said bring it out.
Yeah,
So
bring it
I'm
out.
really
No, bring it out.
speaking on what I'm hearing, and I hear these discussions go this way often, and so I gotta speak on it, because I'm not here for
That's
this.
good. So we have a comment here?
Yeah, no, mine was just, you said change, what Me Too has changed for me. And for me, how it's changed, I like it to become very routine in my life, and it scares me. I go up a certain stairwell, I go down a certain stairwell, I sit in a certain space. I am a classroom teacher, so students are not allowed to come behind my desk. As a minister, I no longer do private conversations with anyone. When I'm in my church I was raised in, I no longer leave my altar. I stay on the altar, that is where I leave out of a certain door, come out of a certain door, I drive up and down a certain street. I would like to have a conversation, interested in a conversation. Kind of don't know what to do with this. I just know that for me, like this thing has caused me not to feel like a trainer no more. I put myself out. I've been called out for making a mistake. I don't know what to do about the mistake. I think I tried to do a better thing. When I reached out to the world to find out if there's support or help, there's not a place. I even tried, spent $6,000 trying to figure out how to create a group of people to talk about it, and it didn't help and didn't go far. Yeah, I knew this was gonna be rough. So I'm gonna say that.
That's okay. Thank you, God, thank you very much. Yeah, so are we talking about the pendulum swinging in one direction and then there's some uncomfortable feelings over this way, but we're not really understanding how it came out. Why we need that pendulum swing that way, so there can be some real people being uncomfortable, so the system can become uncomfortable, so things can change. You know, when #MeToo came out, as a black woman, I was thinking, well, I'm not paying attention because white women are screaming. That's just me. That's how I felt. Right? So, but black women have been subjected, black and brown women are subjected to this kind of ugly You just shut up to get along, because you need to bring a paycheck home. Right? Yes.
My name is
Nikki?
So we were talking about bringing it out.
Project so that you know we're not doing.
So yeah, we were talking about bringing it out, right? And I think one of the other parts of this conversation is it often ends up being a gender binary conversation where we're only talking about men. We're only talking about. It ends up being a gender binary conversation where we're only talking about men, or we're only talking about women, and we're not including everybody who's in the room, and we're not including everybody who is there, right? And so, like, what does it mean to have a conversation that is erasing an entire population of people and preventing them from being able to be protected as well, because we're not there.
Right, and if you're not intentional about that, right? Then when people speak up who don't finish those binary roles, you're less likely to pay attention. Right. So we need to, that's good, we need to call that out and make it clear. And if it's not clear in here, I think that's good feedback for me. But you're absolutely right. It's just, you're not going to become part of the conversation if you're not seeing part that's the norm. One over here, and then we're going to move to the zero tolerance. Your name?
My name is Thea.
Thea, oh, hi Thea. Yes, and Thea's got a good, strong voice, so I know she should.
I hope so. So I think I heard you say that we can say, I hope we talk about, did you say that to someone? Yeah. Yeah, okay, I was just getting clear before I say the thing I'm going to say. Did you say that?
I hope that we're going to talk about intersectionality, talk about what Dr. Johnson has.
Just that prep, I hope we
Yeah, that's
okay, so I hope that we're going to talk about what, where did you go? Nakia just spoke of, but also include all the institutions that we get messages from. I'm thinking particularly church. I'm thinking about the family unit and how, again, boys are raised different than girls, what we're taught, and that there's so many different messagings, that go. I had a very strong athletic father who taught me to hurt men if they ever, so I walked around as a young person thinking, oh gosh, I hope he doesn't do anything because I'm going to have to break his knees.
Right.
At like 7. And so that's traumatizing. That for me to have to think I'm going to have to take you out in order to just have a boundary. And so, I think there's just so many mixes of messages that we all walk around in. Like we say that we are impacted by a matrix of institutions in terms of being dehumanized with racism. It's just, I think it's all the same program, and the silencing that happens. And so I'm so grateful that my young brother spoke up. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to have to move on to the next part. I apologize again. This is why I don't.
When we do our workshop with people who do what we doing now, we tell them trust the process.
Yeah.
I don't think she really availed enough yet. And all of us keep saying, I wish we do what we tell people. Let's trust the process and see where she go on with, because we come into so much stuff and you haven't even started your piece yet.
All this is informing us. I appreciate it. We are all being informed. I'm growing and learning.
To only look at the issues based on harassment of women versus men, or are we also talking about non-binary issues and also transgender? And she said, do it all. So that just helped me to figure out what we're going to talk about. So she said it's not just, looking at men versus women, it's like non-binary, transgender, etc.
Well, we thought it was a really, we were in the process of discussing, we didn't get to really kind of defining it, but what we thought is that for many people in the group, zero tolerance. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So what we thought that many people in the group were just responding to the term zero tolerance, all the history around it, what it meant, and what that could mean for us. Is it a humanistic process? Is it not a humanistic process? Are we throwing people away when our principles say we don't throw people away? And so those were the discussions that we were kind of in. We hadn't gotten to the end of it, but we were just unpacking those pieces we thought were important to any policy that we have. Also looking at the relationship.
So history and understanding of what zero tolerance has done to the humanistic side of our.
Well, what zero tolerance has done to our community.
Okay.
And then, looking at our principles as an institution and how does zero tolerance fit within those principles and what would they look like? We are saying we're humanistic. We are saying we don't throw people away. So within all of that, how do we address, what are the mechanisms, and how do we move this to the next level where we're trying to get. So that was what we discussed. And we discussed also the dynamic between cores, trainers and training, but also the fact that when we come into some spaces, some of the people who come to see us who have not heard this information and have heard about some of our people also look at them like rock star celebrity, and what is that dynamic and how does that play out? So that's as far as.
So I think those are really good points.
The main thing we talked about, first we talked about zero tolerance, the terminology and the history of it, and how it's used very powerfully to track black children into the prison system and schools. But rather than talking about zero tolerance, we talked about a need to never let it go unaddressed. So as opposed to having a prescription of punitive discipline, having a prescription of never letting it go unaddressed. And then second, also, if we're going to have an expectation of people to engage in a consent culture, we have to form a consent culture in our organization. So we have to actively be creating a culture in our organization that's supported by policy and practice that focuses on consent to the most fundamental level, even from greetings in the morning, hugs, and handshakes.
That's right.
And then the third thing is transparency. So, of course, there's the legal things with respect to transparency. But as much transparency as we can within the legal limits that we have, so that people know what the processes are, know what's been tried, know what has worked and hasn't worked.
There was a question that was brought to the table around culture.
Yes.
So just a culture of
Yes.
how we. I need a mic.
No, right.
Oh, right, not my finger. You know, like what we do in the South versus what happens in the North, how you greet, who's a touchy group of people, who's not, and just there's just a level of ignorance just on that, let alone knowing if we've triggered somebody or just not knowing. There's so much not knowing, and so that came up, and also there was a discussion about, well, two things. One was shared about when white trainers were no longer training with white trainers, and a level of humanity that was lost. Thank you for that. Oh, because there was a level of humanity that was lost, and not knowing how to be white women with men of color. There's just a lot of areas where we don't know. And so I appreciate all the wonderful things that were already shared about content and transparency, but there's just stuff we just don't know.
Okay.
And the don't know what we don't know impacting people. I feel like there just needs to be more digging and
You know, a lot of times we end up in situations where something has happened at some point in some time in an organization. And this happened to an organization I worked for several years ago, okay? And then there was rush, get the policy in place. And then the policy was in place, but nothing in the organization really changed except we had new words, okay? But the basic MO didn't change. And so part of what we talked about is don't rush. I mean, if we are really talking about having in place anti-racist, sexual harassment policies, okay, that needs to be infused in everything that we do. It needs to be infused into the culture. It needs to be infused into the way we do our work, our principles. And we don't live in that kind of culture on the daily. And so once again, it is forging into territory where we're going to be isolated. And so how we do that needs to be done with care and within the figuring out how to live this within the principles that we have. If we're really true. Otherwise, we're just talking.
Well, what our group thought was a problem because Barbara May was the only woman in our group. And she was saying the most found something because she should be the one make the presentation. Then she said, oh, y'all men trying to tell a woman what to do. You know? So even though she should be up here saying this, for some kind of reason out here, the first thing we said the word zero tolerance. People of color and brown people, we're not zero tolerant people to start off with.
That's right.
Because the zero tolerance can mess us up. And how do we navigate and being respectful of the culture of brown people and people of color where touching and talking is a part of who we are. And so how do we navigate that and maintain that without changing that reality that's a part of our culture? Because part of our culture is touching. And, you know, and so how do we do that? That's the case. But we think that the word zero tolerance might not be the best to use.
That's right.
To use. We might need to talk about how we would create a policy. But just saying zero tolerance, because zero tolerance historically had been with everybody, you got to change your culture and go along with what's real out. We think that would kill this organization when you don't understand the culture of touching and being. Now, how do you get permission? Maybe that's what we have to talk about.
Okay.
There was one of the things for me as an African American woman who fortunately worked very well with African American men. And I got to be conscious all the time that there's so much damage between us. I don't speak for other people of color. And I understand as men and women that we are on a healing journey. Whether, and I'm talking non-binary too, we just kind of diss each other. And then I gotta be always conscious of the imposition of white folks giving me the language for what's going on in my community. I also have to be really clear. See, I understand this stuff. Now when I go to a workshop, I say, let me make something clear in my introduction. When I call you baby, I don't want your ass, I'm from New Orleans. Well, part of that, because it's real, and I know that. So for me, and the zero tolerance, don't bring that language to me. Because I know what it's doing to my face. That's a white language. That is not who we are as a people. So for me, how do I, one, respect and protect, you know, the bodies and spaces of everybody without diminishing what's real in my culture and what's kept us alive as a people. And that means that, but I asked, I said, you a hugger? But see, everybody don't ask. I'm okay with it, but everybody don't ask. So I've learned to ask, and I learned that, like you said, we don't know there. I learned that because I realized how many, particularly for me, how many women had been so damaged, so they gotta protect that space. So I gotta ask you permission. And people good at giving it to you. You know, but the zero tie is not a language. How do we, and I don't know, I can't tell you I know the language, but I know that we gotta figure out a humane way. Not throw people away, because I know in my community, most of the brothers fucking clueless. You understand? I'm just saying brothers, but some of us too women, in terms of what sexual harassment or misconduct is. But I also can't let white folks come tell me what it is. And so it's a very narrow space, y'all, that we gotta navigate. So I just don't want us to take your time, like slow your roll, that we get a language that speaks to who we are, that one don't throw people away because they make a mistake because they've been culturally rooted in some screwed up shit. You know what I'm saying? So I gotta keep a space there. Let's just say it's a brother, it could be a sister too, because I deal with this whole Me Too movement, and I have to tell white women, you know, I don't disbelieve or believe you when you automatically bring some shit to me. I got 5 brothers and folk done bought all kind of bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So I got to check all him and you out. See, that's a whole different kind of thing. So I just want us to not just grab all this language. Follow the law, nurture, respect, and protect. See, like, I got to protect you, I got to respect you, I got to respect your presence. And also admit we gonna mess up on the front end. See, if I mess up, you know, I don't recognize, I recognize you based on what I've been socialized, then you got to love me enough to correct me. Or that's not who I am, and I got to be strong enough and clear enough to say, I'm sorry. You know, help me, move me. Whether it's with pronouns, because it's a new thing for many of us. In my community, you come in my community and go and call me they, let's get real. My folk gonna look at you like, no, when they called us they, that wasn't no positive thing. So just for us to understand, we got a lot to work through, y'all, to understand folks' culture.
Okay. So I really like the